Today, you're going to begin a two-part video tutorial where you're going to learn how to design as well as do the front-end development of a Nuxt.js based blog using a headless CMS called Ghost. Before we begin, this video's sponsor is Linode, and they make it easy and affordable to host your site, app, or service on whatever technology stack you use. Unlike entry-level hosting services, Linode is a step up to powerful, fast, fully configurable cloud computing. With server plans starting at just $5 plus no hidden fees or surprise outages, Linode offers a no-nonsense hosting at a price you can afford. So sign up now using the link below to get a $20 credit on your new Linode account. Hey everyone, what's up? Gary Simon of CourseCentral.com. So today we have a big one for you. This is in total probably going to be about an hour and a half to 2 hours long, split up into two different video tutorials. And the first one's today. And so what we're going to be creating from scratch and what we're going to have created by the end of both of these videos is this blog right here, this blog. So first of all, yes, it is responsive. And second of all, it's based on Vue.js or Nuxt rather, which gives you server-side rendering, meaning that if SEO is important, especially if you have a blog, it should be important to you, then it's going to render all this content for the search engines to be able to find it. And so this is also based on this. It's grabbing all this content here from a headless CMS. So what is a headless CMS? Well, basically, if you don't want to go through the work of having to create your own backend in an area for people or yourself to have to write your posts and manage all of them, you can use what's called a headless CMS. There's a bunch of them out there. I'm going to be covering the integration of them, several of them. The first one happens to be one called Ghost. And in Ghost, it makes it very easy to edit your content. So let me just show you something really quickly. If I go here to my Ghost panel, this is the Ghost admin panel where you would write your posts and pages and all this other stuff. And as you can see, welcome to Ghost Bro, welcome to Ghost Bro. It's all updated in real time. So if I go here and I say Ghost Bro 2 and just click update and refresh here, we'll see Ghost Bro 2. We also have pages that are working here. I just did a quick example. I show you exactly how to pull in custom content from pages as well. So in this video tutorial, we're just going to be focusing on the UI design in Adobe Experience Design or Adobe XD. You can use any other one that you want, but because I love UI design and I'm releasing a UI design course soon, check the link here in the description to sign up to get notified when it's available. I love teaching design. So we're going to be talking about all these design decisions and just ultimately try to help you become a better UI designer. In the second part, that's when we're going to get into the coding. I'm going to release that in a day or two. And so, yeah, let's go ahead and get started. But first, make sure to subscribe. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started here using Adobe Experience Design or Adobe XD. You can use Sketch, Figma, whatever else you want. We're not going to be using anything that's too crazy. My dog's barking in the background. But we're going to go ahead and get started with mobile first. All right, so there's mobile first when it comes to front-end development and HTML, CSS, but also here in UI design as well. So this will help us simplify the design as much as possible and work towards progressive enhancement where as we get to larger devices like a tablet or a desktop, we're going to skip the tablet just for this demonstration. I don't want it to be too long. We're going to go right to desktop after mobile. But then we'll be able to add more features and be able to change up the layout based on the increased width that we'll have at our disposal. All right, so right here with our template, our iPhone template, we're going to get started here with the top. You know, this makes the most sense, the header section and the hero section. All right, so I've made the determination that I'm going to separate the actual navigation and the hero section in its own container. And then beneath that, we'll have our posts. All right, so let's go ahead. And I'm kind of not sure where I'm going to place this. I'm just going to put it randomly. You can always adjust it later. Get rid of that border that XD is always adding. And for this right here, it's going to be our primary color that we really want to use in the UI. So I've already determined it's going to be somewhere right here in the purplish realm, maybe a little bit more blue on the blue side. I really like that right there. So 7700FF is that color code. You can also open up the asset panel, and you can take this color right there, and we can use this as a part of, you know, like a design system. So we can just call this primary color. There we go. You don't have to do that, but it's nice to manage, especially if you're working with a really large document. Then it's nice, and it's nice to be able to use that. So we're going to have just the person's name up here. So for your blog or whatever the name is, could be your personal name or not. I'm going to be Gary Simon, of course. I'm going to make that white, and we want this to contrast well. So I just did a video recently where I did a review of the Stark plugin, or the extension here for XD. It also is available for Sketch and Figma. And if I get it out real quickly, plugins, we'll go to Stark, and we'll go to Rapid Contrast Checker. I take both of these elements. It's going to let me know if this adheres to at least the WCAG standard for contrast of AA, and it is. So the result, the contrast ratio is 6.5. We need to get to 4.5. So this works well. If I had made this a little bit brighter, for instance, guarantee you it fails, 4.1. So you really want to choose your colors very carefully when it comes to coming up with a color palette or a color scheme for your branding and your project. So I'm going to stick with these two right here. I'm going to use Nuneato for this. It's a nice sort of roundish font. You can't really tell here, but we'll get some larger text, and you can experiment with that yourself. I think we'll go around size 16 for the type right here. I'm going to duplicate it. Oh, we're also going to make this bold. And the reason I'm going to make it bold is because we want these two type elements, this is going to be the menu over here, to separate from each other. So that's visual hierarchy. By the way, let me drag this over here on the screen. This is a little app that I had made, and I'm going to be making it available shortly. I'm probably going to add more features to it. And also change this up a little bit, probably add a couple more things. But when it comes to UI design fundamentals, these are the things that you really have to keep in mind, the forefront of your mind, especially when you're starting out, that for every element that you create that's a part of your UI and the whole UI itself, you have to always be considering, is my white space correct? This little dragger bar right there, that's just for me when I rate other people's designs. Is the contrast correct? Is the color correct? All these things are very important. So like for instance, we only have a couple elements here, but a lot of this comes into play already. So for instance, when I place this type right here, I didn't just place it right up against the edge, because that would be bad for white space. All right, so we want a lot of whites, not a lot, but enough so that it isn't too far, but it's not too close as well. So somewhere right around here would probably be pretty ideal. You could probably get a little bit further away, but that's okay. We also have our contrast. The color, we already know in contrast is working very good with each other. White space is good. Visual hierarchy comes into play when you have a couple more elements. So Control D, for instance. So we have visual hierarchy that we have to pay attention to for the navigation. So for the navigation, I'm only planning on having 3 links, so we don't have to have a hamburger menu icon. If you had more than that, you probably wouldn't be able to fit it on here, in which case you would use something like that. But really, if you can avoid that hamburger menu, you should do so, because it's an extra step that people have to click in order to access your links. All right, so let's go ahead and make this regular. So right there, we've reinforced the visual hierarchy. And so what is the visual hierarchy? Well, if you have these two elements that are exactly the same size, font weight, color, etc., the eye doesn't really know where to look first, right? But once you start changing them up through these different visual properties, such as weight, for instance, you can really influence, oh, I just went the wrong way. You can really influence where the eye should go. So I'm going to put who again, and then make this regular. So now we just given importance to this element right here. Let's go ahead and duplicate that. move it over. And we're just going to have 3 links, like I said, posts, and duplicate that. Hold shift and just move it over, make sure they're even space apart, and then contact. All right, so we take these 3, and I'm looking at the white space and ensure that it's even from the left and top, just like as it is over here. I think we could also probably scale these down just a tad bit more, all of these. So maybe we'll go to 14. All right. And for now, I like this just as is. Okay, so let's continue on here. I'm going to have a headline. This is a very conventional thing. You have a headline to inform the people or use ad copy to try to get them to stay. Also inform them about, you know, what the site is. Welcome to my dev blog. I don't know. Okay, so we can now, right here, when it comes to visual hierarchy, once again, we have an issue. Kind of don't know where to look now because everything is the same font size. But the most important element to this point in the design happens to be this H1 element, or this header element. I say H1 because front-end developer in me. So let's increase this pretty substantially and then also make it bold. So this is pretty good. I may just get rid of dev. That'll allow me to increase the size a bit. And now we've really placed importance on this element right here. It's the first thing that, you know, chances are it's the first thing that a person is going to read, which is very important. Secondary elements are up here for the nav bar. Now let's go ahead and add a subheadline, which is usually just a sentence or 2 of supporting text. All right, and we're going to just lorem ipsum this, but first we'll put this at around size 16. We're going to make it regular, and we're going to use a plugin called Lorem Ipsum. You can just go to Discover Plugins, type in Lorem, and you can install it very quickly without having to reload. Fill with placeholder text, insert it, and let's drag this down. Oh, there's not enough. Let's go ahead and do that again. Lorem Ipsum, fill with placeholder text. There we go. So now we have more to work with. Now looking at this, what is wrong? All right, based on these elements, what is the one thing that really stands out as being incorrect? Well, white space. This is way too close to the edge, and it just throws off the entire flow of the design. Got to give it room to breathe. So we're going to hold Alt and drag this in so that it drags in equally from the left and right. Maybe right around there. I don't want to quite have this much text, so we'll maybe just pull that up a bit. And now we're spacing things out. You don't want to go too close. It's too hard to read. Right around there would be good. All right, and then we're going to have a call to action button. So we're going to take the rectangle tool, come from the center. You'll get that center guideline. Left click, hold Alt, and right around here is pretty good. We'll change it after in a second, and we'll drag those corners in. You don't have to. I'm choosing, which is a subjective preference, so it's not objective. It's not like 100% right or wrong to have rounded corners. I'm choosing just to make these rounded. And I'm going to take the type tool, and I'm going to left click from the very left and drag out to the very right. And the reason I'm doing that is because then it allows me to have this centered so I can perfectly center the text. Hire me. All right. Can't see it yet because of the background, and we need to change that definitely. So we're going to actually change this from white. You could go, by the way, you could make this completely white. In fact, that might be the better way to go about it. But I did this project beforehand, and I'm looking at a reference. The way I chose to go about this, so for instance, you could do this. Let's move this out of the way. This would be perfectly acceptable because the eye's really drawn to this call to action button text right here, because this element really demands a lot of attention because it's a big, wide area of white, and it contrasts real well with the background. This would be perfectly fine. I chose to go a slightly different route to make it not stick out quite as much because this is a blog, so the fact that I want people to hire me as well is kind of like a side note, really. So to maybe de-emphasize the importance of this call to action button, what I'm going to do is take the background and we're going to make it darker. Move this off screen. Just by, you know, a small shade or so right there. So you can still see it. But then we're going to take this, so the contrast is obviously horrible, and we're going to use maybe a secondary color that works well. So right there. It's kind of like a neon or fluorescent orange or yellow highlighter color. I think that works well. Right there is centered up. We could probably stand to bold this as well. All right, something like that. And then finally, that's all I want to have for this section. We're going to pull this up. And what I'm looking at is probably to have, you want to have an even amount of white space based on these three elements right here. So the amount of white space from here to the bottom of that text right here should be around the same from here to here at the bottom. All right, so that looks good. And if you think there's too much white space, and because you want to have your actual blog posts up a little bit higher, just, you know, move these up like that and like that. So that's pretty good right around here. I'm happy with that. Okay, so now let's go ahead and continue on with the bottom section. So we could just go with 100% white here in order to create, you know, a real stark contrast between this element up here, the navigation and the hero section, and this stuff down here. I'm going to go and do something slightly different. I'm going to take the background here, the artboard background color, and make it just slightly gray. So it's F3, F3, F3. That's what we're going to use. All right. The reason I'm going to do that is so that I can place our content in a container of sorts. So we'll take this. So we'll say this is our container right here. We want to make sure that this starts where this starts on the same column, essentially. So we'll just drag it out from the very left to right. And it looks like I'm not even. You can definitely tell there's more space here. So we'll get this fixed up here in a second. There we go. That's much better. Now we'll get rid of the border because borders, generally speaking, especially in this context, aren't good. They just add unnecessary clutter. Borders used to be real popular back in the day for UI designers. We're going to drag this in, and you know what? I'd like to see a little bit more of a contrast between this foreground element. So I'm going to take this. We're going to just slightly make it darker. So we're at EC, EC, EC right there. So just a little bit darker, not too much. Before we get to this container, I do want to put like what would be a subheading, like in an H2 element in CSS. I'm just going to type in latest thoughts. Please don't ever use that color right there. We got to fix the contrast there, of course. And so we're going to left align that first of all. And we are going to, we can just make this black. This isn't entirely important, so we can really scale it down. Latest thoughts right around there. And I think that's good. All right. So now this will be like our first post for a fictional blog post. So I'm going to take the rectangle tool, left click, and come out right around here. Get rid of that annoying border. Drag the border radius in. We can fix that afterwards. And now we're just going to go to a plugin, and I'm going to use Unsplash. I'll just type in Office, get image. There we go. So now we have an image that's placed in there, kind of just a placeholder image. All right, so let's take a look at these border radiuses. This border radius right here is 18. This one is 18, and it actually should be a little bit smaller so that it makes sense as if it's scaled inside of this container. I think I like that pretty decently. All right, so next up, we're going to have kind of like the author, or you could do like a label. This would be the associated information with the post. So we'll do like Gary Simon. I think we'll use this color. And you'll see how this works. You know what? Let's just leave it black first of all, because we're going to have a little bit lesson in typography here in a second. We're going to duplicate this, and this is going to be our blog title. Actually, I don't want to duplicate it. We're going to use this. We're going to drag it out because titles can be, multi-line. We'll just say welcome to Ghost. I'm just looking off the fictional data that we're going to have to use to work with when we get to the Ghost API and all that. So by default, let's also make that black. I'm just going to get all of our information here first that we're going to be using. And then we're going to make the type look really good and work well. We'll also go ahead and just take this stuff because it's already lorem ipsum for us. So we'll just drag it down here, make it black. There we go. We'll get this set up evenly, left align it. All right. Okay, so right now, this is terrible, okay? This doesn't make sense for many different reasons. So you have to prioritize your content as much as possible. What is the most important element, for this particular container, which is the blog post. And it's really just a preview of the blog post. This is an excerpt. So you have the author, okay, pretty important, but you have the title. The title is the most important thing. So we need to emphasize that as much as possible, and this is visual hierarchy. So we need to increase this size so that it demands more attention. So there we go. We've already fixed this quite a bit and made it look a lot more, suitable for something like a card design here. We can separate this further though. So first of all, what size is this type right here? This is 16. This is 16 as well. We could probably get away with making this 14 or so. And that further, separates the type in terms of visual hierarchy. And for our author, I think we could separate this too, even more so. And you could do that. You can do so in just as well as to, introduce your brand colors more or reinforce it. We can use it right here as well. So let's go ahead and make this regular as well. And we're spacing these out just so that they look pretty solid here. So I'm just looking at the amount of white space here versus here. And I think this is solid right here. Okay, so now I think I'm going to have a little bit of a drop shadow on here. Now I see a lot of people get these wrong, like they'll make them real dark like that, and that's just doesn't look good. You can do shadows, but you need to make sure that they're really subtle. And I'm going to take the opacity even down more, so you could just barely notice it at all. You don't have to, by the way. You didn't have to do that. That's just kind of like a subjective preference that I had. So now we can take this down quite a bit. We'll take all this with the repeat grid tool and pull it down. Get this up. And there we go. Of course, our example is going to have more, but we get the point so far right here. Now, normally, if this were a real project, you would work in a design for the pagination and all that good stuff, and even a footer. But we're just going to end this part right here. We are already 20 minutes, and we have a lot more to go. All right, so this is our very first post. All right, so what are we going to do next? All right, what's the layout going to look like when somebody clicks on one of these posts? You need to design that. So Control D with that artboard selected. And let's get to this. So this is going to be a lot quicker. We are going to delete this. We're going to ungroup the grid. We're going to get rid of the bottom few right there. And I'm going to delete the picture. And let's see here. We're going to left align this. This is actually going to be, I'm choosing to have the title of the blog in this purple area, and I'm going to hold let's see, Alt here, and just to make sure we have the same amount of margin and padding here. And we're going to move this container up, maybe right around there. And maybe we'll move this up a little bit. All right, so in CSS, we can achieve this just with some negative margin top. And this way, it kind of just gives us the same container feel that we had, and it reinforces the same style throughout the design. And I think this is solid right here. So what we can do now is, oops, right-click, ungroup that before you try to delete anything specific. And this is just where our content's going to go. Right around, right inside here. So you could do a lot more lorem ipsum, generate it to fill out the whole thing. Well, I'll do that real quick, actually. Let's see here, lorem ipsum, and fill with placeholder, insert text. There you go. You get the point. So this is where, the blog post would essentially be shown. And that's all I'm going to really dedicate to that part. Of course, if this were a serious project, you would give them a way to go back. I'm planning on having the name. You click the name, it's going to go back to the home page here. But a back button would make sense. Having additional meta information, like when the post was created, you can design for all that stuff as well if you wish. Just to keep it simple, and so we can kind of get rolling here. I'm going to make it dead simple, kind of like this. Okay, so just so this isn't unnecessarily long, let's push that up. Okay, so now at this point, we're going to do the desktop, all right? So what we'll do is to go to the artboard tool. We'll go to desktop here, Web 1920. And now we need to take this design and translate it to this design, which is obviously completely different. We have a landscape mode instead of portrait, essentially. So it would not make sense to just keep this same design for here. So we're going to have to change it up. And so that's where responsive web design comes into play and all that good stuff. So let's go ahead and we're going to take just the top stuff. I'm going to duplicate it and just drag it in over into this artboard. Get that right there. And let's get rid of the layers so we have a little bit more room. All right. And what's nice is there's a responsive resize by default. So when we resize this whole thing, for the most part, it works. Of course, we have issues up here. So what we want to do now is get this working so that it makes sense for our desktop. So the first thing that we want to do, and by the way, you can go to your artboard, you click on layout right here. We could see the grid right here. It's kind of just like a handy way so you can place items where you want to. We'll say there's a container for a Web 1920, maybe right around here. So nothing will exceed this outer bounds right here. So we'll take contact and put it in the right part of this grid right here. All right, and then we just want to make sure that these are evened out inside. So for now, we can go ahead back and hide the grid layout. And we're going to move these over. And we definitely can scale things up here. So when it comes to front-end development and CSS with media queries, we can set the body font size to something like, from the default 16, and we could push it up to 18, 20, and everything will scale up automatically. And you'll see all that here in the next video. But what we want to do is increase the size of these elements. So we can go to like 16 or maybe even larger, like 20 or so. And we can also do the same thing with the padding. So look how close it is up here. When you're dealing with the desktop or these larger devices, you have a lot more room to work with your padding and your white space and your margins and all that. So those should be adjusted as well. So let's push this down, maybe to right around there. And these are a little bit too close as well. So let's get these moved a bit. So we want to have an equal amount of distance between these. So let's go right here and then there we go. All right, so welcome to my blog. This can be increased, drastically. This right here just kind of looks silly. Let's increase the size Again, we're still lacking in the white space because this is all really pushed up. Let's give ourselves some more room here. Take these elements. There we go. So as you can see, as we're spacing everything out, things are starting to make a little bit more sense. So let's increase this. You could probably stand to get this in a little bit as well. I still think these might even be just a tad bit too small. There we go. All right, so very simple. I think this background right here would be perfect for having like a watermark sort of thing. For instance, if this was like a code blog or something, we could do this. Like this is a little bit generic. You see everybody doing this, but just for an example, I'm not going to do this for real. But we could change this to like Montserrat here, and we can have like a big graphic like a SVG in the background. And what we could do is take down that opacity, or make it the same color, and just drop down the brightness just a bit. So then we right click, or let's go to our layers, put it just above the rectangle, and then we have a nice little sort of, illustration of sorts to make this look a little bit interesting. I'll leave that there. Maybe I'll integrate it into the actual project. So this hire me, make that a little bit bigger. Push things down just slightly. Take this. All right. So far, so good. Okay, so now at this point, oh, by the way, being that we're on desktop, I mean, if you wanted to, you could have taken these things and left align them here, this type element, and this, and then have another column of content perhaps over here. You could have done that just as easily, but we're keeping it pretty simple here. But now the one thing that it's going to change up is this portion over here. So let's take this element right here and duplicate it, drag it over, right click, or not right click, but just ungroup that. Get rid of those three. Now, you have an option here. Oh, by the way, let's get that latest thoughts in here as well. Okay. You have an option, really. You could really just take these and put them in like a column of 3 or 4. What I mean by that is if we repeat grid and just do this, just push this out to where this column meets right here. And maybe make them a little bit larger so there's not so much space. That would be perfectly fine, really. But what I'm going to choose to do is something different. So what we'll do is right-click and ungroup. See, it'll automatically group your entire selection for you when you use repeat grid, so that's why you do that. And we're just going to pull these out like this. All right, and then we're going to take these 3 bits of information, put them over here, and really the thumbnails that we're going to be using are basically going to be like square. All right, and then we're going to take these 2 elements, put them here for now, and we're going to increase the size of these because all the font sizes are increasing here. Maybe just by, well, first of all, let's push this out. Let's push that. All right, and what we'll do is we're going from 14 here. We'll see like 22 here. Scale this up quite a bit as well, and then this type definitely scale up. All right, so now it looks a lot better. All right. Right around there looks good. Also, like I said, we're going to be using the EMM unit for our padding and our margins when we get to CSS. So that means that these are flexible units that will scale up. They're relative units that will scale up and increase as the browser width or the device width increases. So what we want to do is move these things away from here, because that's the amount of space, that's the amount of margin that will exist on mobile, but it's going to be more so here. So what I'll do is just take all 4 of those elements, move them in like here. I'm still having a hard time seeing the difference between these colors. Oh, that's because this is white. No wonder, Gary. Let's see here. We want to get this background color. Okay, there we go. There we go. That's a lot better. So now we can see the difference. And we want to make sure everything's evened up. There's too much space here and not enough there. So we got to keep things consistent. Yeah, right around here seems good. All right. Put that right there. And there we go. So now we can take this. We'll scale it down just to show a few. And that looks pretty good. So again, pay attention to all of these different variables. Let's do the final page, which will be just this version right here, the specific post view page over here. And really it's going to be very, very, very similar. In fact, I think what we'll do to try to make this as fast as possible is, first of all, that's 51. Okay, I just want to remember that value right there. 51 and 25. Okay. We're going to take everything with exception to that logo. There we go. And hit delete. And then we're going to take this and we're going to copy, come back over here, paste. All right. And obviously we need to take these layers and sort them at the bottom. Drag that out. All right, and then we will start that here. Increase that one to 51. Scale this down. Give ourselves some more white space. This stuff over here, we need to fix that in a bit. We're going to drag, hold Alt. There we go. And then this, of course, all right. Of course, we lost our little, this element. I don't think I'm going to include it anyways, just because we're keeping things real simple here. But yeah, and that's basically it. Of course, the actual content's going to fill out this area a lot more, so it looks like an actual blog post, not just some, incomplete thing. But that's basically it right there. So let's real quickly, if you wanted to prototype just these 2 elements or these 2, we can switch to prototype. Anybody clicks on any of these, push it over there, tap, it will be just transition, and yeah. And then if somebody clicks the name, we'll go back. So now we hit play. Oops. We hit play and we click on this. There we go. Very simple, not very exciting. So that is going to be the design that we work on, and we make it a reality with the help of Nuxt as well as the Headless CMS Ghost. All right, so now that we have the design done here and we know what we exactly what we want it to look like, we're in the next video in part 2, which is the final part. We're going to go ahead and make it function in Nuxt.js using the Headless CMS as Ghost. All right, so I will see you guys real soon. Make sure to subscribe. Goodbye.